Night 1. A hoof tapped against the window panes. It was 4 in the morning, and Portia was sitting outside of Abloom's bedroom window. Her eyes were blank, and her smile slight enough to go virtually unnoticed. As Abloom turned her head toward the window, Fluttershy raised a hoof and tapped against the glass again. She mouthed 4 words, her mouth barely moving. It's cold out here. Abloom pulled the covers over her head. She listened to the creaks and groans of the house signaling it would be dawn soon. The tapping started again. Night 2. Fluttershy was standing outside the window again. Her eyes didn't look quite right, but Abloom would have been at a loss as she asked to describe how. The dark red stain across the left side of Fluttershy's face contrasted harshly with her normally bright fur. She again tapped on the glass, again mouthed those 4 words. It's cold out here. It was not cold. If anything, it was an unusually warm spring night. Abloom pulled the covers up to her muzzle. A part of her wanted to open the window and let Fluttershy in, yet there was that whisper at the back of her young mind. No. Some part of Abloom's brain said, "Do not open the window." So she merely sat there, staring into Fluttershy's slightly off eyes. Sleep seemed a remote possibility, but eventually it came. Abloom dozed off, just as the tapping stopped. That night, Night 3, Abloom dreamed of toys. Not merely toys in general, but familiar plush or wooden faces from her childhood. She saw the wooden dolls Granny Smith had given her. The hand-me-downs from Big Macintosh and Applejack were also there, although they looked dingier than Abloom remembered. She found herself digging through what seemed to be an unending pile of the toys. What am I looking for? Abloom wondered. Abloom decided a minute later it must be King Paws, her favorite teddy bear. She remembered loving him immensely when she was a foal. But why couldn't she find him? Surely he must be somewhere. Surely this relic of Abloom's foalhood was not so easily buried. But King Paws hadn't been buried, had he? He had gone missing. He had vanished from her life one spring night, and Abloom had never been quite the same since. With this realization, Abloom started to sob. This rush of emotion yanked her out of her dream. Portia was sitting outside the window, clutching her mouth with a tattered old teddy bear. Night 4. Abloom slept in Applejack's bed that night. She made up some excuse about nightmares, poorly aware of how immature she sounded, but her big sister was more than willing to switch bedrooms for the night, and of course Abloom could not tell her the real reason she was so distraught. Lying in bed, Abloom started thinking about her foalhood for some reason. She recalled bright eyes peering from the open wardrobe, shadows slinking across the floor. A husky sigh as she approached sleep. But those were not memories, were they? Surely they were just the remnants of past bad dreams. Applejack complained of a headache the next morning, but otherwise was none the worse for wear. Night 5. Evelyn was alone in the house. Her siblings and grandmother had left the premises, and the former due to a last-minute order and the latter due to some business with a distant relative. They would not be back until late the next day. Prior to bed, Evelyn locked all the doors and windows in the house. She made a bed for herself on the living room couch, and as one final precaution, Apple Bloom took her old garden home from the barn. She laid it next to her makeshift bed within whose reach. It was rain outside. Apple Bloom listened to the raindrops spluttering against the roof as she dozed off. Occasionally, she was convinced she heard something. A footstep, a bang, a whisper? No, it was her imagination, or perhaps the wind. Apple Bloom snuggled deeper under the blanket. More noises. They sounded as if they were coming from her bedroom, but that was impossible. The window was closed. But was it closed? Apple Bloom sat up, her heart pounding. She thought her knocking down of the house had been true, but had she intended to avoid her bedroom, trusting the window to be closed, that any pony in her family could have opened it prior to their leaving? Even more noises, banging, and perhaps footsteps. And Apple Bloom was not certain they were coming from her room. She clutched the blanket, quivering. What was she to do? Investigate? Flee? But what if it really was her imagination and the window was firmly shut? If so, stepping out of the house might put her in more danger. Apple Bloom drew off the blanket and dropped to the floor. She had to know. Perhaps she was trying to her own death. But it was better than simply waiting for some unknown to grab her. Apple Bloom took the garden hoe in her mouth before she headed up the stairs. The house was silent, but Apple Bloom was not fooled. She approached her bedroom with caution. A part of her expected the door to fly open, and for some awful creature to pounce. But having a weapon of sorts made Apple Bloom feel brave. Brave enough to gently push the door open without hesitation. The window was open. The wind was now practically howling and was slapping sheets of rain and leaves into the room. Judging by the twigs and leaves that had been umbracated under the window, it had been open for a while, but the open window was not the part that made Apple Bloom pause. It was not the cause of the stream that climbed halfway up her throat. She saw it within seconds, and when she did, Apple Bloom thanked Celestia she had not stepped into the room. Something was in Apple Bloom's bed, a pony-shaped one visible under the covers. It was moving, its chest rising and falling with every breath. Apple Bloom thought she smelled something rotting and dusty, like the pages of a very old book, but she could not imagine it. Apple Bloom did not move, neither did the creature, save for its breathing. Apple Bloom realized the creature did not seem to realize she was there. It did not stir as she stood frozen in the doorway, nor did the wind and the rain seem to disturb it. Apple Bloom eventually left the room, finally shutting the door behind her. She went back downstairs, slower this time, as to not make much noise. Apple Bloom ended up spending the night in the barn. When her family returned and demanded an explanation, she made up some half-little story about a burglar She refused to return to the house until all the rooms had been searched. As everyone had expected, no signs of a break-in were found, save for an open window in her bedroom. Apple Bloom returned to her bedroom. The search was complete, other than a few dry leaves and lingering smell of decay. There was no indication of anything having slept in her bed. However, Apple Bloom found that one of her dresses in her wardrobe was covered with dirt and what appeared to be a single bloody footprint. Apple Bloom burned the dress in the fireplace later that day. Night 6. Apple Bloom stayed up all night. She was sleepy to the point of near madness, but she refused to tear her eyes from the window. Fluttershy was watching her yet again. This time she held a single piece of ripped cloth in her mouth. It was from the dress Apple Bloom had burnt. Apple Bloom had buried the remains of it in the yard. Apple Bloom thought of the eyes in the shadows that seemed to haunt her the foolhood. She was not convinced she also heard scratching noises and perhaps tapping. But memories and nightmares had become interchangeable as late. Apple Bloom was not wholly convinced they were not one and the same. The two sat locked in what seemed to be a staring contest until morning came. As soon as Celestia's light poked his way through the clouds, Fluttershy turned and trotted away. Apple Bloom did not get up from her bed. It was minutes before she at least gave into slumber. Night 7. Applejack had found the remains of the dress and didn't know why Apple Bloom was burning her clothes. She also asked Apple Bloom about her parents' living troubles and her hostility towards Fluttershy. Apple Bloom confessed nothing. She made excuses that were far from plausible. Apple Bloom did not care if her sister was satisfied or not. A part of her hoped Applejack would send her away, perhaps to a relative's house. At least Apple Bloom would be far away from this nightmare if that happened. But Applejack could not send her away. Apple Bloom was certain Applejack was consulting Big Macintosh over the matter. But for the time being, she was forced into another staring contest with Fluttershy, a clever, loathsome creature who wore Fluttershy's face outside the window. Fluttershy pressed her hooves against the window. Her eyes seemed larger than they should have been. She appeared mournful as if denied some great conquest. Apple Bloom could only stare for so long before she turned away. Fluttershy mouthed those familiar words again. It's cold out here, she mouthed. Apple Bloom stuck her head underneath the covers. She did not hear Fluttershy's tapping at the window, but that mournful face had taken her over her thoughts. Night 8. Apple Bloom thought she might have been sleepwalking the previous night, for she had not wakened in her bed but curled up in front of a closed window. Enough is enough, Apple Bloom thought as she lay in bed. It might have seemed like a brave proclamation, but in truth, Apple Bloom was terrified. She again did not sleep. Her eyes focused on the creature outside her window. Fluttershy returned Apple Bloom's stare, smiling and licking her lips. Night 9. Earlier, Apple Bloom had overheard her older siblings talking about doctors. She was aware they planned to send her to one, whatever her siblings planned to do. Apple Bloom was confident her troubles will end soon enough. Apple Bloom opened her window that night. She waited until the sun had almost sunk below the trees before she did so. Her family had dozed off a little while ago. Confident she was the only sleepless soul in the house, Alboon left her bedroom and went downstairs. In the kitchen, Alboon procured an old gas lamp. She also took the sharpest kitchen knife she could find from the drawer, far more useful than the garden hose she had chosen last time. But in this case, the purpose was not mere defense. Apple Bloom waited until darkness had truly fallen. Then she crept back to her room, the gas lamp held precautiously in one hoof, and the knife handle in her mouth. Apple Bloom nudged the door open inch by inch, carefully to minimize the noise she made. The creature was again lying in Apple Bloom's bed, the outline of its form underneath the covers. Apple Bloom placed the gas lamp on the floor. She froze as it touched the floorboards and was the slightest thump. But she saw no evidence of the creature awakening at the sound. Apple Bloom held back a sigh of relief. Apple Bloom waited a few more minutes, as certain that thing was asleep. She then approached the bed, knife still clutched tightly in her mouth. She was shaking, but refused to hesitate in this moment of action. Apple Bloom reached the side of the bed and gently pressed both hooves against it. She eased herself up, carefully pulling herself on the bed next to the creature. And then the creature moved. It was only a slight shift, as if it was trying to get comfortable. But it was enough to completely destroy Alboon's nerve. Alboon dropped the knife, a squeak of terror flying out of her mouth. She pressed both hooves against her mouth, but it was far too late. The creature seemed to sense Alboon was near, and move in one swift, jerky motion, arcing its back and bending its head in a way no normal pony could have managed. The creature gave a long growl. Its body appeared to convulse as it drew the covers from it. Alboon screamed, leaping from the bed. The creature leaped from the bed as well, moving in a way similar to the spider. It still resembled Fluttershy, but its neck was bent at an unnatural angle as if broken. Its head was bent to one side and upside down. It regarded Evelyn with its upside-down grin, a grin extending far past what should have been possible. Its tongue hung limply from one side of its mouth like that of an excited dog. It was panting in eagerness. Applejack rushed into the room, a gas lamp in her hoof. "What the heck is going on?" Applejack said breathlessly, but Apple Bloom could only whimper, pointing a hoof at the creature that now stood in silent triumph near the window. Apple Bloom's white and bemusement and horror. "What in tarnation?" Applejack gasped. The creature moved his neck again, adjusting his head to a more normal position. Its face no longer even vaguely resembled Fluttershy. It instead had morphed into some twisted mockery of the shy's pony's face. The mouth stretched even farther, the pupils smaller than pinpricks. It was breathing heavily, a tongue at least a foot long hanging from its gaping maw. Applejack tossed the gasoline at the creature. It shuddered upon impact, setting the wild thing on fire. All at once, the creature's face rearranged itself. It now became a more accurate representation of Fluttershy. The flames seemed to engulf it immediately, a sense not unlike that of Sir for Rose, as patches of his fur hastily burn away. The creature ejected loudly, returning between screams eerily similar to those of TooShyShy, and these screeches not unlike that of a tortured bird. The fur and the flesh burn away at an unnatural rate. The screams and screeches continuing long after it should have ended. The last to surrender to the inferno was the light pink mane. After a few moments, all that remained was a charred skeleton. Apple and Applejack did not speak to each other. Neither spoke a word of the incident. Even after Applejack had buried the body in a secluded part of the farm. In fact, they both took the secrets to their graves. Apple never slept again with her window open, even on particularly hot nights. Eventually, she was able to resume regular interaction with the real TooShyShy, although it took months before she could look her in the eye. And for a while after that, Apple would shudder every time TooShyShy smiled. The creature's smile would haunt her for the remainder of her days. Occasionally, on nights when it was particularly cold and the wind is close to howling, Evelyn will swear she hears a tapping at her window, but she never gets up to check. She merely snuggles deeper under her covers, wanting to enter dreamland quicker, but it's harder to ignore the voice. It whispers to her. Seeming inches away from her ear, it sounds very much like TooShyShy. It's cold down here.